Maria lived a life that most people could only dream of, but she never let it change who she was. She had married James, one of the wealthiest men in the world, whose name was synonymous with success. His empire stretched across industries, luxury, hotels, cutting-edge technology, and even an airline that connected cities around the globe. Yet despite all the money and fame that came with being Mrs. James Thompson, Maria stayed true to herself. She loved simplicity. Every morning she woke up early, cooked breakfast, and walked to the local market to buy fresh vegetables and fruits. Her neighbors knew her not as a billionaire's wife, but as a kind woman who always greeted them with a warm smile. James often teased her about her modest lifestyle. "You're married to me," he would say jokingly. "Why are you still carrying your own grocery bags?" But Maria didn't care for flashy cars or designer clothes. She found joy in the little things: a cup of tea on a rainy afternoon, a good book, or laughter shared with friends. Still, there were moments when her husband's influence crept into her life, whether it was attending charity events or flying abroad for business trips. Those occasions reminded her of the extraordinary world she belonged to, but they also made her appreciate her quiet routines even more. One crisp autumn morning, Maria decided it was time to visit her younger sister, Emily, who lived hundreds of miles away. They hadn't seen each other in months, and Maria missed their long conversations over cups of coffee. Emily had recently become a mother, and Maria couldn't wait to meet her newborn niece. The thought of holding the tiny baby filled her with excitement. She packed a small suitcase with essentials, comfortable clothes, a few books, and some homemade snacks, and booked a flight for the next day. What made this trip unique was how Maria chose to travel. Instead of using the private jet that James owned, she decided to fly commercially on her husband's airline. It wasn't because she disliked luxury. She simply wanted to experience what ordinary people went through every day. Flying economy class seemed like a way to connect with the real world, far removed from the privileges her last name afforded her. Plus, she liked the idea of blending in, of being just another face in the crowd. So, without telling anyone, not even James, she reserved a seat online under her maiden name, hoping to keep her identity hidden. The day of the flight arrived, and Maria woke up earlier than usual. She dressed casually, wearing faded jeans, a soft sweater, and a pair of sneakers. She tied her hair back into a loose ponytail and carried only a small backpack along with her suitcase. At the airport, she stood in line with everyone else, patiently waiting to check in. When it was her turn, she handed over her boarding pass and ID to the agent behind the counter. The young woman scanned the documents quickly, gave Maria a polite nod, and wished her a pleasant journey. No one paid her any extra attention. To the staff and passengers around her, she looked like any other traveler, and that suited Maria perfectly. As she made her way through security, Maria observed the people around her. There was a businessman typing furiously on his laptop, a family with 2 giggling children, and a college student listening to music with oversized headphones. Each person seemed absorbed in their own world, unaware of the famous name Maria carried. She smiled to herself, enjoying the anonymity. After passing through the metal detector and collecting her belongings, she headed toward the gate. Along the way, she stopped at a cafe to grab a coffee and a muffin, chatting briefly with the barista about the weather. These small interactions felt refreshing, almost grounding. When boarding began, Maria joined the queue, clutching her ticket tightly. As she stepped onto the plane, the familiar hum of engines greeted her. She located her assigned seat near the window and stowed her bag in the overhead compartment. Settling into her chair, she glanced around the cabin. The seats were filled with passengers of all ages and backgrounds, some reading magazines, others scrolling through their phones, and a few already dozing off. Maria pulled out a novel she had been meaning to finish and opened it to the marked page. For now, she was exactly where she wanted to be, among strangers, unnoticed and unbothered. But as the minutes ticked by, something unusual caught her eye. One of the flight attendants whispered urgently to another, casting furtive glances in Maria's direction. At first, she dismissed it, thinking perhaps they were discussing seating arrangements or meal preferences. However, the whispers grew louder, and soon, several crew members appeared to be exchanging nervous looks. Maria shifted uncomfortably, in her seat wondering if something was wrong. Was there an issue with the flight, or was it something else entirely? Little did she know her decision to travel incognito was about to unravel in a way she hadn't anticipated. Despite the growing tension among the crew, Maria tried to focus on her book. She turned the pages slowly, savoring the story, though part of her mind remained alert to the activity around her. Occasionally, she noticed the flight attendants huddling together, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. Once, a steward approached her row, but hesitated before moving on to assist another passenger. Maria's curiosity deepened, but she resisted the urge to ask questions. Whatever was happening, she hoped it wouldn't disrupt her plans. All she wanted was a peaceful flight to see her sister and meet her new niece. But as the plane prepared for takeoff, Maria sensed that her journey was about to take an unexpected turn. As the plane taxied down the runway, Maria leaned back in her seat trying to relax. She glanced out the window at the gray tarmac and the distant buildings of the airport. The hum of the engines grew louder, and soon the aircraft lifted off, the ground climbing steadily into the sky. Maria watched as the city below shrank into a patchwork of tiny rooftops and winding roads. For a moment, she forgot about the strange behavior of the flight attendants and allowed herself to enjoy the view. But her peace didn't last long. About 20 minutes into the flight, a voice crackled over the intercom, startling everyone on board. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen," the pilot began cheerfully. "On behalf of the entire crew, I'd like to welcome you aboard this flight. We hope you're comfortable and enjoying your journey so far." Maria nodded along with the other passengers, thinking nothing of the routine announcement. Then, the tone of the pilot's voice changed slightly, becoming more enthusiastic. "Today we have someone very special traveling with us, a person who holds a unique place in our company's story." Maria froze. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized what was coming next. Before she could react, the pilot continued, "Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Maria Thompson, the wife of our esteemed CEO, James Thompson." The words hung in the air for a second, before the cabin erupted into gasps and murmurs. Passengers craned their necks, searching for the woman whose name had just been broadcast to everyone on the plane. Maria felt her face flush red with embarrassment. She sank lower in her seat, wishing she could disappear. The flight attendants sprang into action almost immediately. One of them hurried toward Maria, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers. "Mrs. Thompson," the attendant said brightly, bowing slightly as she handed over the bouquet. "We are honored to have you with us today. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable." Maria forced a polite smile and accepted the flowers, though her mind raced with frustration. This was supposed to be a private trip, not a spectacle for the whole plane to witness. Passengers nearby began whispering among themselves. Some stared openly at Maria, while others discreetly snapped photos with their phones. A man sitting across the aisle leaned forward and asked, "Is that really you? Are you married to James Thompson?" Maria nodded awkwardly, unsure of how to respond. Another passenger chimed in. "Wow, I can't believe you're flying economy. That's amazing." Maria managed a weak laugh but avoided further conversation by pretending to focus on her book. Inside, however, she felt a mix of anger and humiliation. Why hadn't anyone respected her wish for privacy? Back in the cockpit, the pilot suddenly realized his mistake. He had received a memo earlier that morning informing him of Maria's presence on the flight, but he hadn't thought much of it. Announcing her name seemed like a nice touch, a way to acknowledge her importance. Now, he understood the gravity of what he had done. Corporate headquarters would surely hear about this blunder, and the fallout could be significant. Meanwhile, the head flight attendant gathered the crew for an emergency meeting in the galley. "What do we do now?" One of them whispered anxiously. "She looks mortified." While the crew scrambled to figure out damage control, Maria tried to regain her composure. She reminded herself that this was just a minor inconvenience, something she could brush off once the flight ended. But the situation only worsened as curious passengers continued to stare and speculate. A young woman approached her hesitantly, holding up her phone. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said shyly, "but would you mind taking a selfie with me?" My friends won't believe I met James Thompson's wife." Maria hesitated but eventually agreed, offering a strained smile for the camera. As the woman walked away, thanking her profusely, Maria sighed deeply. This wasn't how she imagined her flight going. To make matters worse, the head flight attendant returned with another proposition. "Mrs. Thompson," she said gently, "we'd like to offer you an upgrade to first class. It's the least we can do after this misunderstanding." Maria shook her head firmly. "Thank you, but no," she replied. "I prefer to stay here." The attendant looked disappointed but didn't press further. Instead, she brought Maria a complimentary glass of champagne and assured her that the rest of the flight would proceed smoothly. Maria accepted the drink reluctantly, sipping it slowly as she tried to ignore the lingering stares and whispers around her. For the remainder of the journey, Maria kept her gaze fixed on her book, though she struggled to concentrate on the words. Every few minutes, someone else would approach her, some asking for autographs, others expressing admiration for her decision to fly economy. While their intentions were kind, Maria couldn't help feeling like a zoo animal on display. She had always valued her privacy, and this invasion of it left her unsettled. By the time the plane began its descent, she was exhausted both physically and emotionally. When the wheels touched down at the destination airport, Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her. She grabbed her belongings quickly and joined the line of passengers waiting to disembark. As she stepped off the plane, she half expected the ordeal to be over, but as she entered the terminal, flashes of light blinded her momentarily. Reporters crowded around, shouting questions and holding microphones in her face. Someone must have tipped off the media about her presence on the flight, turning what should have been a simple trip into a full-blown incident. Overwhelmed, Maria pushed past them, clutching her suitcase tightly. She pulled out her phone and called Emily, explaining the chaos in a shaky voice. Within minutes, Emily arrived to rescue her, ushering her into the car and driving away from the madness. Sitting in the passenger seat, Maria replayed the events of the day in her mind. She had set out to experience life as an ordinary traveler, but instead she had become the center of attention. The irony wasn't lost on her. Still, she knew this wasn't the end. Word of her unexpected adventure would spread, and the consequences would follow. For now, though, she was grateful to be safe with her sister, far away from prying eyes and intrusive questions. As the car sped toward Emily's house, Maria resolved to find a way to reclaim her anonymity and ensure nothing like this ever happened again. By the time Maria arrived at Emily's house, she was physically and emotionally drained. The drive from the airport had been quiet, with Emily glancing over occasionally to check on her sister. "Are you okay?" Emily finally asked as they pulled into the driveway. Maria forced a smile and nodded, though her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. She stepped out of the car, lugging her suitcase behind her, and followed Emily inside. The cozy living room felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos she'd just endured. Emily's baby girl lay asleep in a bassinet near the window, her tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. For a moment, Maria forgot about everything else and simply stared at her niece, marveling at how peaceful she looked. But reality soon caught up with her. As Emily made tea in the kitchen, Maria sat down on the couch and called James. Her husband answered almost immediately, his deep voice warm and familiar. "Hey, love," he said. "How was your flight?" Maria hesitated, before replying, unsure where to begin. When she finally told him what happened, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then James burst into laughter. "Wait, you're telling me my own airline announced your name on the intercom, and reporters were waiting for you at the airport?" His amusement only added to Maria's frustration. "It's not funny, James," she said sharply. "I wanted this trip to be normal. Instead, I felt like some kind of celebrity." James sobered up quickly, sensing her irritation. "I'm sorry, Maria. I'll talk to corporate and make sure something like this never happens again. But honestly, I think it's kind of sweet that people recognize how special you are." Maria rolled her eyes even though he couldn't see her. "Sweet isn't the word I'd use," she muttered. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, with James promising to handle the situation personally. Still, Maria knew the damage was done. News traveled fast, especially when it involved someone connected to one of the richest men in the world. By morning, headlines would likely scream about the billionaire's wife who flew economy, and the airline's embarrassing blunder. True to her prediction, the next day brought a flood of media coverage. Social media platforms buzzed with posts about Maria's unexpected journey. Some praised her for choosing economy class despite her wealth, calling her down-to-earth and relatable. Others criticized the airline for violating her privacy, accusing them of turning a private passenger into public entertainment. Memes popped up online, showing pictures of luxurious jets alongside captions like, "When you're rich but still stuck in economy." Reporters camped outside Emily's house, hoping to catch a glimpse of Maria or get an exclusive interview. It was overwhelming, and Maria did her best to ignore it all. Emily tried to shield her sister from the madness. She closed the curtains, turned off the news, and kept conversations light, focusing on the baby whenever possible. "You've got to laugh about it," Emily said one evening as they sat together in the nursery. "Imagine being the woman whose name gets announced on a plane full of strangers. That's something you can tell your grandkids someday." Maria chuckled softly, appreciating her sister's attempt to lighten the mood. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. Flying under the radar had always been important to her, and now that bubble of anonymity had burst. Meanwhile, the airline scrambled to address the growing backlash. Corporate executives held emergency meetings to discuss the incident, realizing the potential damage to their reputation. Customers valued privacy, and announcing Maria's identity without her consent had crossed a clear line. Within hours, the airline issued a formal apology, both publicly and directly to Maria. "We regret any discomfort caused during Mrs. Thompson's recent travel experience," the statement read. "Protecting our passengers' privacy is a top priority, and we are implementing new protocols to ensure such mistakes do not occur in the future." Internally, employees received stricter guidelines regarding VIP passengers, emphasizing discretion above all else. Despite the apology, the story continued to dominate headlines. Talk shows debated whether Maria's choice to fly economy reflected humility or rebellion against her privileged lifestyle. Opinion pieces analyzed every detail, from her casual outfit to her decision to decline the first-class upgrade. Even James found himself fielding questions about the incident during a business meeting. "Your wife seems to have caused quite the stir," one of his colleagues joked. James smiled politely but changed the subject, knowing Maria wouldn't appreciate being the center of attention, even indirectly. For Maria, the most challenging part was dealing with the constant attention. Strangers approached her whenever she left the house, asking for selfies or autographs. Local shopkeepers greeted her warmly, saying things like, "Aren't you the lady from the news?" At first, Maria handled it gracefully, signing autographs and posing for photos. But after a few days, the novelty wore off, leaving her increasingly frustrated. She missed the simplicity of her old life, the ability to walk through a store unnoticed or sip coffee at a cafe without drawing stares. One afternoon, while pushing the stroller with her niece, she snapped at a teenager who asked for a picture. "Can't you see I'm busy?" she said curtly, instantly regretting her tone. The boy looked hurt, and Maria apologized, feeling guilty for letting her emotions get the better of her. Back home, Maria spent hours reflecting on the experience. She understood why people were fascinated by her story. It wasn't every day that someone married to a billionaire chose to live so modestly. Yet she also resented the intrusion into her personal life. Fame, even accidental fame, came with a price. It robbed her of the freedom to exist without judgment or scrutiny. As much as she appreciated the kindness shown by strangers, she longed for the solitude she once took for granted. Sitting in Emily's backyard, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria resolved to take control of her narrative. She wouldn't let one misstep define her, or dictate how she lived her life. Over the next few days, Maria began formulating a plan. She reached out to James's PR team, requesting assistance in crafting a statement. Together, they drafted a message thanking everyone for their support, but firmly reminding the public of her desire for privacy. "While I'm grateful for the positive response," the statement read, "I hope to return to my quiet life away from the spotlight. Please respect my wishes moving forward." Once released, the statement garnered widespread praise, with many applauding Maria's dignity and composure. Slowly but surely, the frenzy died down, allowing her to breathe easier. Still, Maria knew this wouldn't be the last time her connection to James attracted unwanted attention. Living with wealth and influence meant navigating challenges others couldn't imagine. But she refused to let fear dictate her choices. Whether it was visiting family, shopping at the local market, or taking another flight, she vowed to stay true to herself. If anything, the ordeal reinforced her belief in the importance of simplicity and authenticity. Fame might come knocking again, but Maria was determined to answer on her own terms. As the days turned into weeks, Maria found herself adjusting to a new kind of normal. The media frenzy had died down, and life at Emily's house settled into a quiet rhythm. She spent her mornings helping with the baby, changing diapers, preparing bottles, and rocking the little girl to sleep. In the afternoons, she joined Emily for long walks around the neighborhood, pushing the stroller as they chatted about everything from childhood memories to future plans. These moments were simple, but they brought Maria immense joy. Being surrounded by family reminded her of what truly mattered: love, connection, and the small joys that money couldn't buy. Yet, even in this peaceful setting, Maria couldn't completely escape reminders of the incident. Occasionally, someone would recognize her at the park or grocery store. "Aren't you James Thompson's wife?" they'd ask, their eyes wide with curiosity. At first, Maria stiffened whenever this happened, bracing herself for intrusive questions. But over time, she learned to handle it with grace. She'd smile politely, confirm her identity if necessary, and then steer the conversation toward something else, like how adorable her niece was, or how beautiful the weather was that day. It wasn't perfect, but it helped her regain a sense of control. One evening, as Maria sat on the porch sipping tea, Emily broached the topic gently. "Do you think things will ever go back to the way they were before?" she asked. Maria thought for a moment before answering. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe not completely. People know who I am now, and I can't change that. But I can decide how I respond to it." Her voice carried a quiet determination that surprised even herself. For so long, she had let others dictate her experiences. The reporters camping outside, the strangers asking for selfies, the endless speculation online. Now she realized she had the power to rewrite the script. That realization sparked an idea. A few days later, Maria called James and asked him to arrange a meeting with the airline's leadership team. When the day arrived, she dressed simply, a blouse, jeans, and flats, and headed to the corporate office. The executives greeted her warmly, expressing their gratitude for her willingness to meet despite the recent mishap. They apologized again for the breach of privacy and assured her that new protocols were already in place to prevent similar incidents. Maria listened patiently, nodding along as they spoke. When it was her turn to talk, Maria took a deep breath. "Thank you for your apology," she began. "But I want to make one thing clear. This isn't just about me. What happened on my flight could happen to anyone, someone traveling for work, a family on vacation, or even a child flying alone. Privacy is important to everyone, not just people like me." The room fell silent as she continued. "I'm not here to punish anyone or demand changes. I just want to help ensure that no passenger feels uncomfortable because of a mistake like this." Her words struck a chord with the executives. One of them leaned forward, visibly moved. "Mrs. Thompson, we deeply admire your perspective," he said. "Would you consider working with us to develop better policies? Your input could be invaluable." Maria hesitated. She hadn't expected such an invitation, but the idea intrigued her. Helping shape a system that protected passengers' privacy aligned with her values. After some thought, she agreed to collaborate with the airline, though she insisted on keeping her involvement low-key. "I don't need any titles or public recognition," she told them. Just let me contribute in a meaningful way. Over the following weeks, Maria dove into the project with enthusiasm. She met with customer service representatives, reviewed existing procedures, and brainstormed ideas for improvement. She suggested creating a confidential database where VIP passengers could opt out of special treatment, ensuring their flights remained private unless they requested otherwise. She also proposed training sessions for staff, emphasizing empathy and discretion when dealing with all travelers, not just those with famous names. Her insights earned praise from the team, who marveled at her practical approach and genuine concern for others. While Maria worked behind the scenes, James watched proudly from afar. He often teased her about becoming an airline consultant, but he respected her decision to use the incident as an opportunity for growth. "You've always been good at turning bad situations into something positive," he said one night over dinner. Maria smiled, knowing he was right. Despite the challenges she'd faced, she had managed to transform humiliation into purpose, and in doing so, she discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. At home, Maria balanced her new responsibilities with quality time with her family. She cherished every moment with her niece, marveling at how quickly the baby was growing. Emily joked that Maria was turning into a natural babysitter, but Maria didn't mind. Caring for her niece gave her a sense of fulfillment that no amount of wealth or status ever could. On weekends, she accompanied Emily to local markets and community events, enjoying the simplicity of small-town life. Even when someone recognized her, she handled it with ease, knowing she was exactly where she wanted to be. Still, Maria knew her newfound role came with challenges. As word spread about her involvement with the airline, whispers of admiration followed her wherever she went. Some praised her for using her influence for good, while others speculated about her motives. Did she do it for publicity? Was she trying to prove a point to James? Maria ignored the gossip, focusing instead on the impact she hoped to make. She believed that true success wasn't measured by headlines or accolades, but by the difference she could create in people's lives, even if they never knew her name. One afternoon, as Maria strolled through the park with the baby, she noticed a young mother struggling to fold her stroller. Without hesitation, Maria offered to help. The woman thanked her warmly, unaware of who she was assisting. For Maria, these small acts of kindness meant more than any title or recognition ever could. They reminded her of why she had chosen this path: to connect with others, to serve, without expectation, and to live authentically. As the sun set that evening, casting golden light across the horizon, Maria reflected on how far she'd come since boarding that fateful flight. What started as an embarrassing mistake had evolved into a journey of self-discovery and purpose. She had faced the chaos head-on, refusing to let it define her. Instead, she had used it as fuel to grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Fame might have found her unexpectedly, but Maria had learned to navigate it on her own terms. And, in doing so, she had reclaimed not just her privacy, but her identity. Maria's days became a delicate balance between her quiet personal life and her growing role with the airline. She continued to spend mornings caring for her niece, basking in the joy of watching the baby grow. Afternoons were reserved for meetings with the airline's team, where she shared ideas and listened to feedback from employees at all levels. Maria made it a point to hear directly from flight attendants, pilots, and ground staff, understanding their challenges and concerns. Her approach was simple. Instead of imposing solutions, she asked questions like, "What would make your job easier?" Or, "How can we better protect our passengers' privacy?" These conversations revealed insights that no report or spreadsheet ever could. One day, during a meeting with the customer service department, Maria heard a story that struck a chord. A young woman recounted how her elderly father had been publicly identified as a VIP passenger on a flight, causing him immense discomfort. He valued his independence and didn't want special treatment, yet the announcement left him feeling exposed and vulnerable. Listening to the woman's frustration, Maria nodded sympathetically. "That's exactly why we're here," she said softly. "No one should feel uneasy when they travel. It's our responsibility to make sure every passenger feels safe and respected." The young woman thanked her, tears welling up in her eyes. In that moment, Maria realized the ripple effect of her work. It wasn't just about fixing a mistake. It was about creating a culture of care and consideration. Word of Maria's efforts began to spread within the company. Employees admired her humility and dedication, often referring to her as the heart of the project. Though she insisted on staying out of the spotlight, her presence inspired those around her to think differently about their roles. Flight. Attendants started paying closer attention to subtle cues from passengers, ensuring they weren't overstepping boundaries. Ground staff implemented new protocols for handling sensitive information, double-checking details before making announcements. Even corporate executives adopted a more hands-on approach, regularly visiting airports to observe operations firsthand. Slowly but surely, the airline transformed, not because of grand gestures, but through small, meaningful changes driven by Maria's vision. Despite these successes, Maria remained grounded. She returned home each evening to Emily's house, eager to leave behind the pressures of her work. The evenings were her sanctuary, filled with laughter, baby talk, and cozy dinners. Emily noticed a shift in her sister's demeanor. She seemed lighter, more confident. "You look happy," Emily remarked one night as they sat together on the couch. Maria smiled, cradling her niece in her arms. "I am," she replied. "For the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm making a real difference." But not everything was smooth sailing. Occasionally, Maria encountered resistance from people who questioned her motives. Some critics accused her of seeking attention or using the incident as a way to boost her image. Others dismissed her contributions, claiming she was simply leveraging her husband's influence. At first, these comments stung, reminding her of the judgment she had faced after the flight. But over time, Maria learned to tune them out. She reminded herself that she wasn't doing this for validation or praise. Her goal was simple: to ensure that no one else experienced the same discomfort she had endured. If helping others required facing skepticism along the way, so be it. James noticed the toll these criticisms took on Maria, even if she tried to hide it. One weekend, he surprised her with tickets to a secluded cabin in the mountains. "You've been working hard," he said. "Take a break, spend some time away from everything, just you and me." Maria hesitated at first, worried about leaving Emily alone with the baby. But when Emily insisted she go, Maria reluctantly agreed. The trip proved to be exactly what she needed. Surrounded by towering trees and crisp mountain air, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. For 2 days, she disconnected from emails, calls, and social media, focusing solely on reconnecting with James and herself. During one of their hikes, James brought up the topic of Maria's involvement with the airline. "Do you think you'll keep doing this kind of work?" he asked casually. Maria paused, considering the question. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's rewarding, but it's also complicated. Sometimes I wonder if I'm stepping too far into your world." James chuckled, shaking his head. "This isn't my world anymore, it's yours. You've earned it. Besides," he added with a grin, "you're much better at this than I ever was." Maria laughed, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her contributions weren't overshadowed by her last name. Maybe there was room for her to carve out her own legacy, one rooted in kindness, empathy, and action. When Maria returned home, she approached her work with renewed energy. She finalized the confidential database system, ensuring that VIP passengers could opt out of special recognition entirely. She also spearheaded a campaign to educate employees about the importance of discretion, sharing real-life examples of how small actions could impact travelers' experiences. To celebrate the launch of these initiatives, the airline hosted a private event for its staff. Maria attended briefly, delivering a heartfelt speech that left many in tears. "Thank you for believing in this mission," she said. "Together, we've shown that compassion and respect aren't just words. They're choices we make every single day." As weeks turned into months, Maria's efforts began to bear fruit. Passengers praised the airline for its improved service, noting how attentive and respectful the staff had become. Complaints about privacy breaches dropped significantly, and employee morale soared. Journalists occasionally reached out to Maria for interviews, but she politely declined, preferring to let the results speak for themselves. Behind the scenes, however, she continued to push for progress, always looking for ways to enhance the travel experience for everyone, not just the privileged few. At home, Maria embraced her role as an aunt with equal passion. She taught her niece to clap her hands, giggling as the baby mimicked her movements. She baked cookies with Emily, filling the house with the sweet aroma of cinnamon and vanilla. On weekends, she explored local parks and farmers markets, savoring the simplicity of everyday life. Strangers still recognized her occasionally, but their interactions felt warmer now, less intrusive. Many expressed gratitude for the changes at the airline, thanking her for making their journeys smoother and more enjoyable. Each compliment reinforced Maria's belief in the power of small, intentional actions. Yet amid all the positivity, Maria never forgot the lessons she had learned aboard that fateful flight. Fame, even accidental fame, came with a price. It forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself and the world around her, but it also gave her an opportunity to grow, to redefine what it meant to live authentically while navigating privilege. She knew she couldn't erase her connection to James or the wealth that came with it, nor did she want to. Instead, she chose to use her position as a platform for good, proving that true fulfillment came not from avoiding attention, but from channeling it toward meaningful causes. One evening, as Maria tucked her niece into bed, she reflected on how much had changed since that chaotic day at the airport. What started as an embarrassing blunder had blossomed into a journey of purpose and self-discovery. She had faced scrutiny, criticism, and doubt, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Fame might have found her unexpectedly, but Maria had learned to shape it into something beautiful. And in doing so, she had discovered a truth that would guide her for the rest of her life. The greatest legacy anyone could leave was one built on kindness, humility, and love. Months passed, and Maria's life settled into a rhythm that blended purpose with peace. The airline's new policies had taken root, transforming not just the company, but also the way passengers experienced travel. Stories of thoughtful gestures from staff began to circulate, flight attendants discreetly assisting nervous travelers, ground crews going out of their way to help families with young children, and pilots taking a moment before landing to thank passengers for choosing the airline. These small acts added up, creating an atmosphere of care and respect that resonated deeply with travelers. Maria took pride in knowing she had played a part in this shift, even if her name remained largely absent from the headlines. At home, Maria cherished the simplicity of her days. She spent mornings playing peekaboo with her niece, delighting in the baby's infectious laughter. Afternoons were reserved for baking or gardening, activities that brought her immense joy. Emily often teased her about becoming domesticated, but Maria didn't mind. There was something comforting about kneading dough or planting seeds, tasks that required patience and yielded tangible results. In the evenings, she would sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. These quiet moments reminded her of who she truly was, a woman who found happiness in the ordinary. Still, Maria couldn't completely escape reminders of her connection to fame. Occasionally, someone would recognize her at the park or grocery store and approach her hesitantly. "Excuse me," they'd say. "Aren't you James Thompson's wife?" At first, these encounters made her tense, but over time she grew more comfortable responding. She'd smile warmly, confirm her identity, and then steer the conversation toward something relatable, like how challenging it was to get grass stains out of baby clothes, or how delicious homemade apple pie could be. Her ability to connect, on a human level, disarmed people, turning potentially awkward interactions into pleasant exchanges. One sunny Saturday, Maria decided to visit a local farmer's market with Emily and the baby. The air buzzed with activity as vendors called out to customers, offering samples of fresh produce and handmade goods. Maria wandered through the stalls, admiring jars of honey, baskets of ripe strawberries, and bouquets of wildflowers. As she picked out ingredients for dinner, a woman approached her holding a toddler. "I hope you don't mind me saying this," the woman began, "but I wanted to thank you." Maria looked at her curiously. "Thank me for what?" she asked. "For making flying less stressful," the woman replied. "My husband travels a lot for work, and he always hated being treated differently because of his job title. But lately, he says your airline has been amazing. They treat everyone the same, no matter who they are. It's such a relief." Maria felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected to hear gratitude like this in person, and it moved her deeply. "That means so much to me," she said softly. "It's exactly why I got involved, to make things better for people like your husband." The encounter stayed with Maria long after she left the market. It reinforced her belief that change didn't have to be grand or flashy to make an impact. Sometimes, the most meaningful transformations happened quietly, behind the scenes, touching lives in ways that weren't always visible. That evening, as she prepared dinner with Emily, Maria shared the story. "It's funny," she mused, chopping vegetables. "All I wanted was to fly under the radar, but now I'm helping others do the same. Life has a way of surprising you." As months turned into a year, Maria reflected on how far she'd come since boarding that fateful flight. What had started as an embarrassing mistake had evolved into a journey of growth and fulfillment. She had faced public scrutiny, navigated criticism, and learned to embrace her unique position without losing sight of who she was. Fame might have knocked unexpectedly on her door, but Maria had answered with grace and purpose. She had used her platform to advocate for others, proving that privilege came with responsibility, and that true success was measured not by wealth or status, but by the difference one could make in the world. James noticed the change in Maria too. "You've grown so much," he told her one night as they sat together on the porch. "I'm proud of you, not just for what you've done with the airline, but for how you've handled everything. You've inspired me to think differently about my own work." Maria smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "We inspire each other," she said simply. "That's what makes us a team." Despite her accomplishments, Maria remained humble. She continued to live modestly, avoiding the trappings of luxury that came with her husband's fortune. Her wardrobe still consisted of comfortable jeans and sweaters, and she preferred walking to the market over driving expensive cars. When friends or acquaintances praised her for her humility, she shrugged it off. "This is who I am," she'd say. "Why change?" Yet Maria knew she couldn't shield herself entirely from the spotlight. Rumors occasionally surfaced about her involvement with the airline, speculating whether she planned to take on a formal role within the company. Each time, Maria dismissed the chatter, reminding herself that titles didn't matter. What mattered was the work itself, the impact she had on people's lives, however small or unseen. She found joy in staying behind the scenes, letting her actions speak louder than words. One crisp autumn morning, Maria woke early and decided to take a walk alone. The streets were quiet, lined with trees shedding golden leaves. As she strolled, she thought about the future. She imagined continuing her work with the airline, finding new ways to improve the travel experience. She pictured spending more time with her niece, teaching her to read and explore the world. And she dreamed of moments like this, simple, peaceful, and free from expectations. For Maria, happiness wasn't found in grand achievements or public recognition. It was found in the everyday. The laughter of a child, the smell of freshly baked bread, the quiet beauty of nature. When she returned home, Emily greeted her with a warm hug. "Where did you disappear to?" she asked playfully. Maria grinned. "Just needed some fresh air," she replied. "Sometimes it's good to step back and remember what's important." Emily nodded knowingly, handing her a mug of coffee. Together they sat by the window, watching the baby giggle as sunlight streamed through the curtains. In that moment, Maria felt complete. She had weathered storms of embarrassment and judgment, emerging stronger and wiser. She had embraced her connection to fame while staying true to her values, and she had discovered a truth that would guide her forever. The greatest legacy anyone could leave was one built on kindness, humility, and love. Fame might have found her unexpectedly, but Maria had shown the world, and herself, that living authentically was the greatest gift of all.